Hey, why do the Jews have Haggadah at Passover? Hmm, so that they can say the right words.
Pesach came from the Hebrew word Pesa, which means passed over, and was used in reference to God passing over the houses of the Jews during the 10th plague of killing the firstborn sons in Egypt. In layman terms, the Jews were simply grateful to God for sparing them during the plague. The term Passover is a literal translation of the Hebrew term that first appeared in William Tyndale's translation of the Bible. While in modern Hebrew it is spelled as Pesa or Pesach, with its roots Pasakh basically meaning to pass over in Hebrew. Pesach is constructed with three letters, Pe, Samek, and Shet, and the Kabbalists say that it can be split into two words to show a deeper meaning. For example, Pe and Sak, which mean the mouthpiece.
In the Hebrew Bible, the Jewish first stepped into Egypt when Joseph, the son of the patriarch Jacob, moved his family there after a severe famine happened in their homeland Canaan. The Egyptians then saw the Israelites as a threat as their population grew, hence an evil pharaoh enslaved them while ordering all Jewish newborn males to be drowned at birth in River Nile. However, the pharaoh's daughter saved a boy, naming him Moses, and adopted him into the royal family. After the revelation of his own identity and the mistreatment of his fellow Hebrews, Moses killed an Egyptian slave and fled to a desert. There, the Hebrew god Yahweh commanded him to return and bring the Israelites back to Canaan. However, the pharaoh refused to release them, and God then inflicted a series of 10 plagues on them. It was the last plague, the death of all firstborn, that caused the pharaoh to relent. The Israelites left quickly, worrying that the pharaoh would regret. As predicted, she sent her troops after them. God then parted the sea for the Israelites to cross over and closed it when the Egyptians' troops were crossing, drowning them. Since then, this story known as the Exodus in the Torah will be told by the Jews every year during Passover.
Remember how we mentioned Seder at the start of this video? The Seder plays an important role in the Passover process, and it is an elaborate festive meal that takes place on the first night of the holiday of Passover, where family and friends come together to celebrate, demonstrating commensality. The word Seder literally means order, and the Passover Seder has 15 separate steps in its traditional order. 4 glasses of kosher red wine are required at the Passover Seder, each symbolizing one of the 4 promises made by God. Passover Seder also includes hiding the afikoman, half of a matzah that is kept between 2 other matzahs. It is eaten for dessert after the Seder meal in commemoration of the Paschal sacrifice.
Moving on to the second day of the Passover celebrations, evening prayers are performed during the Haftalah ceremony, in which holy verses are recited over a cup of wine. The candle is also extinguished by dipping it into wine overflowed onto the plate. The Seder dinner is then carried out similar to that of day ones. For the third and fourth days, there isn't an elaborate Seder, but they continue to eat kosher and drink a glass of wine each day throughout the festival. In addition, they abstain from forbidden food such as chametz, which are leavened food products, and instead, matzah, which is unleavened bread, is consumed for all 7 days. Chametz represents food that puffs up due to yeast and is anthropomorphized as ego, which should be left out during this religious festival. The Jews ate matzah as slaves. However, matzah is eaten today to commemorate their redemption from Egypt. So, how can the same food item represent two opposing ideas? Does matzah represent slavery or redemption? This portrays the idea of food as a non-verbal form of communication, in this case an auto-antonym. On the 5th day, the Jews will continue their prayers in the day as well as to graze after meals. And on the 6th day of Passover, the morning prayers continues, and on this day, they are required to prepare a special mixture of food, permitting the preparation of food so that they will be able to cook and prepare for Shabbat on the last day of Passover.
Finally, to commemorate the great miracle of the splitting of the sea comes the 7th day of Passover. It is customary to remain awake all night studying the Torah and to enjoy a festive holiday meal with the holiday kiddush. The restriction of eating leavened food will be relaxed, and matzah will then be mixed with water and other liquids to create Passover favorites such as matzah balls and matzah bray. Other traditional food that is eaten by the Jews on the last day of Passover includes Passover noodles, whereby the noodles are prepared from potato flour and eggs served in soup. The batter is fried like thin crepes, which are stacked rolled up and sliced into ribbons. Also, charozet, which is a sweet mixture of fruit, fresh dried or both, with nuts, spices, honey, and sometimes with wine. The charozet is also a symbol of the mortar the Israelites used for building while enslaved in Egypt. And lastly, the Jews would eat a lamb or a chicken leg as a symbol of God's strong hand, and Korban Pesach.
Described in Exodus 12:1-28, says that the Israelites were commanded to slay a lamb and paint their front doors with its blood. They then roast the lamb over a fire in its entirety and consume it with unleavened bread hurriedly. This was because the Israelites may have to flee at any moment's notice. However, in modern times, some things have changed. People no longer have to paint their doors with lamb's blood, and it has instead become a communal activity, with alcohol and a feast being consumed at one's own pace instead of hurriedly, where friends and family can gather to socialize as well as to give thanks for their ancestors' sufferings.
Some Christians observe a form of the Jewish Passover what is often linked to Easter. The Jewish Passover's influence is apparent on a Thursday of Easter week, which is called Maundy Thursday. Christians break bread and drink wine in remembrance of Jesus when he ate the Passover meal with his disciples, known as the Last Supper. These two food items were inspired by the Jewish Passover, and they were matzah, the same unleavened flatbread part of the Jewish cuisine, and also wine. These food items are symbols of remembrance for Jesus' body and blood that was sacrificed on behalf of all of mankind. The redemption from the bondage of sin through the sacrifice of Christ is celebrated, a parallel of the Jewish Passover celebration of redemption from the oppressive bondage in Egypt.
Then there's the similarities between Passover and Ramadan. During both festivals, the Jewish and the Muslims observe food restriction, pay special attention to communal sharing of meals, and these festivals are highly regarded by the respective religions to remind people to be grateful for what they have. However, in spite of them, it's important to note the significant distinctions between the two cultures. Firstly, during the 7 days of Passover, the Jewish people cannot eat anything with leavening agents. Ramadan, on the other hand, is a whole month of fasting where the Muslims refrain from any sort of consumption from dawn till sunset. Secondly, it is traditional for Jewish families to gather on the first night of Passover for a ceremonial meal called the Seder, while during Ramadan, food and drinks are served daily before dawn and after sunset, referred to as Sahur, which is the pre-dawn meal, and Iftar, the breaking of fast. Similar to Seder, Sahur and Iftar also denote an opportunity for fellowship with families, friends, and surrounding communities, all bonded through eating. This is known as commensality, the social event of people eating together. According to Beeman, there are 8 stages of commensality, 7 transitions between stages, and 7 pragmatic triggers. One example in the context of Seder is reading the Haggadah, which would be the pragmatic trigger for the signal to eat, while transition in leaving the table for the post-commensality activity would be the search for afikoman. And finally, Barak, which means bless, is the pragmatic trigger for the statement of departure as the Jews say grace after the meal. Coming to the last bit, Passover is a holiday about freedom as it celebrates the Jews' liberation from slavery in Egypt, in hopes that the Jews today think more consciously about those Jewish slaves in the past. Fasting during the holy month of Ramadan serves as a blessing from the Almighty so that people become aware of the hardships of the poor and the needy. So both Passover and Ramadan are therefore reminders to be grateful for what we have.
That's all my group has for you, and we hope you enjoyed our presentation.